And there we go. So this will be recorded and it will be loaded onto the FAME site. It will be on our YouTube channel, and it will also be on the participant blog. So I'm going to go through, share a couple different resources, and just talk about your kickoff for this year. If you have any questions as we go, please just go ahead and type them in the chat box. And just want to make sure, can everyone hear me? If you can hear me, just please chime in with a yes. Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and go through just a few updates, some information, and some resources for you. So first of all, welcome to Cohort 3. This is our third year, as the 3 would indicate. And we're really excited for this year. We've got a lot of new participants, a lot of new schools, a lot of new counties, but we'll also be utilizing some of the wisdom and knowledge, and already have been, from past participants. So you guys have the benefit of 2 different cohorts having gone through it already. Just want to re-emphasize our guiding beliefs with formative assessment, because it's important that we keep coming back to why we're doing this. We're not doing this for the credit, we're not doing this just for the course itself, but we know that formative assessment involves a true shift in practice, and those instructional shifts that have to happen over time are significant. Our site-based professional learning, it's a precondition for any true change to occur. So doing this together as a school-based group has a significant impact on the way your school interacts and your teachers interact with each other. Instructional leaders are lead learners. They learn alongside teachers during implementation. They are not there to be experts. They are not there to answer all the questions. They are there to learn alongside their teachers and serve as a sounding board for some of the policy and implementation questions. And instructional leaders will leverage FAME resources to align with other instructional improvement initiatives. These guiding beliefs will reappear when you start going through the application activities for school leaders. So our FAME learning outcomes. Again, understanding how formative assessment, fits within a comprehensive assessment system. So you'll notice a lot of integration that we're trying to assure here. Understand the importance of intentional lesson planning, embedding formative assessment into existing classroom routines, because we don't want people to be starting from scratch. Deepen the use of formative data to adjust instruction and provide descriptive feedback, and understanding the features of a collaborative classroom culture and how that facilitates self and peer assessment. And if this is something that you want to share with your team, I think it's really important to have a strong understanding of what the goals are for this entire year, because this is the learning outcome for the entire course. So the professional learning design, I'm going to go back over this because now that you've had time to settle back in after leadership and to think about these things, we're going to go through this with a better basis of understanding, and I'm going to talk about each of the elements, what it looks like, and what it means for teachers. So first, the self-study online modules. Just to go over, again, there are 5 modules. Each of them builds upon the next, so please discourage teachers from getting ahead of themselves. We start with foundations, we move to planning, then evidence, then collaboration, and then next steps, which is really sustainability and embedding this into the next school year. Just a few tips about the course itself. So registration, I've had a number of schools already start submitting their school lists via the Excel spreadsheet that you could have uploaded or downloaded, or having people complete the form on the blog. Either method works. Just ensure that people have checked all of their information. Once that information has gotten loaded into the course, because it's not immediate, it doesn't just enroll you immediately, they'll receive an email. So just tell them to watch out for an email. It'll tell them, just like you received, the site, the login information, the password, all of that. As we've mentioned, the new accounts, if you have not previously had a Blackboard account, it will have that generic password that was sent. I'm not going to repeat it. If you already had a Blackboard account, you use that password that you had before. And we encourage, basically now require people to use their school email address. So if you have a new school email address, register with that one, because that way we know who is in what county, and we are separating groups by county for grading and reviewing information. The application activities or assignments, we're currently revising those. I'm going to show you just a quick preview of them in a second. We also have a separate leadership strand, so if you're not a school or a classroom-based educator or you're a school leader, the application activities this year will be a little bit more finely focused towards you. And then the grade section, and I'll show you that as well, it records the modules and the application activities, and the application activities will be graded by someone in the county or the school, so we'll be going through that on a county basis. And then there's discussion groups for administrators and facilitators, and that's where a lot of our files are held. So the files for the facilitator group has all of the application activity, the COP community practice guides and all of that information. And then it's also for discussion. So in previous years, if there's a question, because again, there's one of me and many of you, it's helpful to post in the discussion section. Okay. So before we go to this, I'm going to just do a quick preview of the modules for you. So you should be able to see this is what it looks like when someone logs in. So they'll log in, and this is what they see. And this is a brief webinar. This is last year's that goes through the information, how to access, how to submit, all of that. And the new teacher one will be September 7th, but if they log in before then, they'll be able to see this. The guidelines and expectations. So this needs to be updated again, which is why teachers have still not been enrolled. But these are the expectations and how to access information. Sorry, there we go. A little bit of information for them, and then the assignments, which are not there right now, obviously, but will be there. Some reference materials, so these are different videos that they can access. A couple different visuals, the peer and self-assessment sentence starter that we gave out at leadership, what is FAME, so there's a lot of different information here. And then the modules, and so this is what the modules look like. The introduction is not totally required for a grade technically. I encourage you to, basically you need to demand that people complete that, otherwise there's going to be a lot of questions. So if they complete this, it tells you exactly how to do all of these different activities. So they get introduced to it.
Professional learning program designed to guide you through the formative assessment process and deepen its implementation in your classroom, your school, your district, and across the state of Maryland.
So just to show you, they'll hit next after it's completed.
Formative assessment is a process teachers use.
All right, and so all of these little icons here have different purposes. They're encouraged to go through and test these out in Module 1 through 5, so it tells them exactly what these will do. This is for their COP prep document, which has to be redirected. Good, I just checked that. This shows their progress with the different topics, so there's a number of different ways that they can check to see if they've completed. And then FAQs. So it teaches them exactly how to do everything. So if they don't do that, then they're missing out on what is formative assessment, the definition, all of these different elements. So I encourage you for people to go through this. You'll see right here the score, tell them to ignore that. conclusion. At the top, you see here, where it says intro, it then says finish. They need to click finish. There's a self-check. Have you completed all the lessons? Check. And finish. They can get a score receipt if they want. They can have access to that and save it. They don't need to, but that way that's how it records. So you can see right there it says 1 out of 0 for the score. And that's how they know they've completed it. So they'll see each of the modules this way. They just click on it. It goes through the separate lessons. We did that based on feedback. People wanted them separated out. And again, see, it reminds you to click the finish button, but they have to do that on their own. In each of the modules and lessons themselves, there'll be notes, and there's also all of the resources there as well. Okay. So before we move on, are there any questions about the modules themselves? They click on My Grades, first of all. This is how to, it's just a short video that someone had created, basically reminding people to go through the steps that I just explained. So that's there as well. They click on My Grades, and they'll see through each their introduction, the module lesson, the different lessons for the modules, and then once the application activities are created again, that'll show up as well. So they can see what they've gotten out of each one. So the introduction is 1 out of 1. It says graded. That way you can just have an idea. Any questions about the modules before we move on? Okay. So the application activities, as I showed you, students will, or teachers basically, will have access to an application activity. They're expected to take the learning from that module and apply it to their classroom context. And there'll be 2 choices. Basically, if they are a classroom teacher, they'll be expected to do the first choice. And if they are not a classroom teacher, there will be another choice for them. And I will show you. So let me just share my screen one more time. The application activities will look like this. They are hidden right now, but it'll have the full directions. It'll have the attachments that they can click and download. And then they're expected to click on the title. It'll have a due date. That due date is a month after the community of practice should have already happened. So you see this was November 15th, 2015. Last year, the estimated date for the community of practice was about October 15th. So, which this year is a Saturday, but that gives them plenty of time after the community of practice to go back, make any tweaks they want, and submit it. And it is as simple as uploading a file, okay? So it's a very easy process. There are also instructions that will be on there as just a reminder to them. And just in case you were part of the cohort last year, the new application activities, we're trying to make them as user-friendly as possible. So last year it was just a grid that looked like this. This year it's also in question format, so people can answer it in whichever format they choose. They will have a link to the Google Docs. So if you are a Google Apps for Ed district, you can simply make a copy of it and put it in your own Google Drive. You'll still have to upload it as a Word document. People have tried doing that before. It doesn't work. But this is another way that we're trying to make sure that it is as useful as possible. Okay. So the next part, the application activities, as I mentioned, we're revising them based on past feedback. They should be submitted after the community of practice so they can make revisions. We have it set up so you can submit 3 times. This is just in case people mess up, which they inadvertently do at least the first time. But really we prefer that they obviously just submit it once. And they can submit it in almost any file type, but they can't submit it in just a link. But it can be pretty much any file type that can be readable. And this is the directions for how to upload it. And then graders, either at the county or school level, and that's county by county how that's being done, can see all of the application activities for their section. They can give feedback on there, and they can also download them. And so most of our counties have decided to do it that way so that they have access to these really helpful application activities, and so they can give feedback to people. Then we have the community of practice. At Leadership, you received a number of resources about the community of practice. There are videos. There's so much information out there. But just to revisit it, it's applying key concepts from the online course and your application activity to instructional practice, taking information from the course to your local school-based context, refining instructional resources and practices, and then holding colleagues accountable. So talking about those next steps, what you will do after the community of practice, what you need some more help with, how people can support each other. And so the facilitator is the one actually leading that community of practice. If the facilitator and administrator want to work together, that's great, but it's typically the role of the facilitator to structure the community of practice, do the planning, the scheduling, create the agenda, whatever visuals need to be done, whether it's a PowerPoint or not. They are expected to learn along with the group, just like the administrator, so please keep that in mind. You're not an expert, you're learning alongside everyone else. And they're expected to do some brief check-ins. And so in the past, people have done things like a weekly email just reminding people of where they should be. Some facilitators have had office hours where they just let people know that this time each week I'll be in this room and you can stop in with issues or questions. And just really encouraging people to say if they have a problem, if they need some help, you're there for them. They have someone there as a resource. Then the documentation. And that last bullet, where your name is registered in the course, we'll get to that, but when you're submitting people for credit at the very end of the year, their name, as they are registered in the course, needs to match their name as they write it down. And sometimes people use nicknames or a different name, but those two things need to match, just like pretend it's a passport. You know, you need to make sure that you have that information matching. And then leadership support. So this is the administrator, the expectations for the administrator. They are a lead learner, so they're not required to complete all the modules, but if they would like credit, they can do so. They view the resources in the course and from leadership training, especially the pieces on giving feedback, and we're going to be coming out with something about that soon. And then there's a special tab on the blog, the Cohort blog for administrators. There's also the Need to Know series that I mentioned, and that's embedded as well, and I'll show you that in just a moment. That's the modules in brief, and this is great also for the facilitator. And each application activity that you have will align to these mini modules. And then the community of practice, you're there as a learner. So you're not, you know, in your traditional role of a principal. You're there to learn alongside them, to understand their struggles, to support them, and give feedback and assistance. And so successful school leaders, they gain familiarity with the content. They're reinforcing connections to other work, so other initiatives and priorities. They're addressing and monitoring any of those barriers to successful implementation, so whether it's a school or county policy, and then attending and supporting the communities of practice. And let me show you some of the updates that have been made to our blog. So if you check out our Cohort 3, our Cohort blog, we have a pared down site, and it really is focused on current participants. So again, we have the what is FAME, and this is to share out so people can share this information externally. What is formative assessment? Information for facilitators, so these are things like forming community practice. There's a sample agenda for the kickoff meeting. The kickoff meeting is not a requirement. It is highly recommended, though. It's really helpful to get everybody together, talk about the community of practice, the expectations, doing some of those norms, and also getting people to log in. So if they've already registered, you get them to log in. You'll show them how to do that, or getting them registered right then as well. And then just a few other items. And this is borrowed from, as a resource from Baltimore County. They did a lot of work on that already. Sorry. And then our other, sorry y'all, it keeps blocking me. I'm not sure why it's not letting me. I'll go here. And then we have a number of resources here as well. Again, there's the leadership and registration. And if we go back, if we go back to this Cohort 3 blog, if you click on administrators and leaders, there is the Need to Know series called the Modules in Brief. It's also on our YouTube. It's a special channel. But if you just want to go straight to the blog, have this bookmarked and look over them. It's just 6 videos. One's about the community of practice. And you can see from Megan talking.
Welcome to the FAME Need to Know Leadership Series. This short screencast is focused on what leaders need to know about the FAME community of practice. During this screencast,
and so you see that there's a community of practice, there's implementation, and then for the first 4 modules as well, there is just under 15 minutes talking about each of the modules and some of the information that you will gain and that your teachers will be looking at. So it's a brief overview. It talks about what leaders really need to know from each module, hence the name, Need to Know. And then it will be aligned as well to all of your, all of the work that you're doing. So that's a handy resource. I encourage you to look at it. Leaders and facilitators, if you want to actually point that out to your attendees, that's useful as well. But again, I like to bring it back to the research on leading formative assessment. So administrators need to understand formative assessment well. We know that you don't have the time to complete all the modules. If you do have time to complete them, that's wonderful. But you need to have an understanding so that you can talk with your teachers about it. And just like you know when a student has not done their work, you'll know when the teachers haven't. You'll know when the teachers aren't really, really completing the work. Administrators have to look for, analyze, and communicate with teachers about what students are doing. And then they need to serve as lead learners who help shape instructional practices. And being part of this cohort as a leader really will help you understand even more where your teachers are and where they need that support and what supports they want. And we know that for professional learning to truly be effective, it has to be something that they also want to receive. And that's a huge part of it, especially if they know that their leadership is invested. And then there's MSDE support. And as I've mentioned before, it's just me. However, we also have all of our content folks easily accessible, our special education department, our ESOL, a lot of our special groups here are happy to help you on content. They're also happy to help you with any of the other practices that you need. Our math department is working on instructional coaching. So there's a lot of different ways that you can receive any sort of assistance that you need from here. So the personnel, we are here to help you. Thinking about your kickoff. So I shared that on our site that you have access to a sample kickoff agenda and PowerPoint. In your kickoff, you should have an initial meeting with participants, or this might be part of your recruitment, so it could be potential participants. Have them log in to ensure that their information is correct. Ridiculous, I know, but every year we have a number of people's emails incorrect. Group norms and expectations. So they should be coming to each community of practice with the modules completed, with their application activity in hand, or if you're at Google Docs, or Google Apps for Ed or Microsoft, or if you use digital tools, then you could also have them share in an online folder, make a copy and share there. And that way during their community practice meetings, they could really easily look at it together. And then create and share a calendar. This is a huge part that includes the community practice dates, the application activity due dates, optional additional meeting or collaboration time. So common time that they may have with the facilitator or with each other to work together and talk. Hand out some classroom signs or posters if you can make a couple color copies. And then parent resources and outreach, so for back to school night. We've talked about this before, but parent buy-in is extremely important. They need to understand what is different. I'm currently working on updating a lot of our resources for parents, but I can show you right now we have on our tab here, parent resources. I'm working on updating the handout, and it's going to be actually about 6 different pages that you can pull out and copy either as a one-sided document or two-sided documents about each of the different elements of formative assessment. There's also a great little video. And then I also went through and pulled out a couple websites, articles, and videos that are really useful for parents. There's this great growth mindset animation, different topics on videos by Bill and William, and then there's just short articles and websites that they can visit. And growth mindset, because it's really important to bring back the fact, drive it home, that formative assessment also encourages growth mindset and encourages students to keep learning and keep growing. And on our parent handout that we're revising, there's also a page, actually I can show this to you right now because I think that page is totally done, about how to talk to your child about formative assessment, how to talk to your child's teacher, and really encouraging parents to be part of the conversation. Let me share the other screen. Sorry, it's taking a minute here. So again, this is in process. We have a short resource about grading because parents always want to know why there are fewer grades when teachers shift to formative assessment. And then we have this quick one about how to talk with your child's teachers about formative assessment. So some questions to start the conversation, and then supporting formative assessment at home, because parents might not even realize they can do these things at home that will help reinforce these activities. And we have made sure that we have the definition on almost every single page, as well as the link to our parent page. And if there are any resources that you need or that you have, please let me know. I'd be happy to share things that you have created, or if you know that there's something out there that would be helpful for others, please share. We are a big state, and there's no need to for anybody to reinvent the wheel if something fantastic is already out there. All right, other information, we say that the registration deadline is September 15th. That is not a hard and fast date. However, we encourage you to have your teachers stand by that date, and they can always drop, because we want them to have enough time to complete the introduction and the first module and the application activity before your meeting. So there are rock stars who could get that all done in an afternoon if they really tried and sat there for 5 or 6 hours and did all the work. But it's really important to keep in mind that the reason that September 15th is the date is because it takes some time to complete all of these activities. Communication. One person from your school, typically the facilitator, should be the one that emails me with questions. It happens sometimes where I get questions from 3 different people in the school. I will not respond to participants. I'll respond to an administrator or facilitator, but please streamline it. For some of you in your county, you should only contact that person. So I know that in Charles County, there's a specific person. In Caroline, there's a specific person, same with Baltimore County. So that will be on your group page as well. And then if you were cohort 1 or 2, we have some information coming up about a learning opportunity with observation and feedback. So check Twitter and the blog for information next week. I will be looking at old email lists and sending out some information, but we are part of the multi-state consortium, FAST, and Formative Assessment for Students and Teachers with CCSSO. And we now have modules to teach us more about how to use that FAIR-OP tool to support teachers in their learning on formative assessment and their application in schools. Very excited. I just got the information today, so I'm going to be releasing it next week once we get a streamlined process. You are welcome, if you are Cohort 3, to look at it, but it is a next step, and I'm sure anybody who's been in Cohort 1 or 2 can verify that it is definitely a next step and not a first step for this first year. Okay, any questions? I've gone through a lot of information here, and I will be sure this will get converted, and it'll be put on our YouTube channel, and it will also be on our blog. No questions? Okay, well, thank you for attending. If you have any questions coming up, please don't hesitate to contact me. Again, there are so many resources